Welcome to part 2 of this mini series of why bodybuilding ruined my health, how I lost my menstrual cycle, what I did to recover it, and how I've maintained my weight over the last 2.5 years without really having to try very hard. Hi, my name's Clara. If this is the first time that you're watching any of my content, I'm a chartered psychologist, I'm a Healthcare Professions Council registered sport and exercise psychologist, I'm also a fitness coach, and yes, I used to compete in bodybuilding, and I'm now more in like the kind of hybrid space. And this is a 3-part video series where I'm talking to you a little bit more about how it is that I stepped away from bodybuilding, why I stepped away from bodybuilding, and what my life has been like since then. If you haven't watched the first part, then make sure that you go and do that, because this video will make no sense without that context. And for those of you who have watched that first video, let's just jump straight into it. So the last time that I spoke to you, I was telling you a bit more about how I finished my bodybuilding prep in 2021, my third and final bodybuilding prep in that December. I decided a month later to come off the pill, and basically when my cycle didn't come back 3 months later, I knew the warning signs and I knew that I probably had hypothalamic amenorrhea. Now, the signs of hypothalamic amenorrhea are different and varied, and I definitely recommend that you go and look up No Period Now What on Instagram, because Nicola will be able to give you a lot more detail in terms of like what to look out for, what the signs are. But what we do know is that when you come off the pill, you should be able to recover your menstrual cycle within 3 months. Doctors and nurses will tell you otherwise, but that is not what the evidence suggests. And so for me, I knew, I knew that my period wasn't coming back, because I was finding it very, very difficult to relinquish the control behaviors that I had established throughout that final prep that I'd been in. And I was finding it really hard to regain weight and to eat more. And I was really, really scared of gaining too much weight and then having to diet really hard again, because I was getting married later on that year. And I guess the last thing that I wanted to do was have to diet super hard for my wedding, because almost in an act of ultimate self-sabotage, I bought my wedding dress 6 weeks post show, which for anybody who's competed in bodybuilding, you will know that that was just a terrible idea, a way to shoot myself in the foot, and a way to almost like guarantee that I'd have to be very lean for my wedding day too. But essentially, once I realized that I had hypothalamic amenorrhea, I went to get my bloods tested just to confirm that. I tried getting them done through the NHS, but they didn't really believe me. They weren't particularly concerned about the fact that I didn't have a period, because I wasn't trying to conceive at the time. And so I decided to get a private blood test done through Medichecks. I'm not sponsored by them, but like they were pretty efficient, expensive, but like efficient at giving me all the information that I needed. And in that blood test, I basically found out that like my estrogen levels were fucking just non-existent. There was a couple of other things that showed up, nothing that was particularly concerning and nothing that seemed to be like irreversible. But yeah, it was pretty clear that like my estrogen levels were not existing, and that was why I didn't have a period. And I understood that conceptually, like I knew and understood logically like the risks of relative energy deficiency. I knew the risks of hypothalamic amenorrhea. I knew it wasn't good, but I also knew that I was getting married at this point in like, 5 months time, and that I had a dress to fit into. And I knew that I was going to have to pull back a little bit on weight. I had like a very nice spring. I'd like stopped tracking calories for a little while. I'd allowed myself to gain some weight, but didn't really kind of fully let go. And I was basically like still engaging in all the control behaviors that were preventing me from recovering my cycle. And so I, of course, dieted for my wedding, because I had to. I had this dress to fit into that I'd bought, beautiful dress by the way, but dress that I had to fit into that I bought at 6 weeks post show. And as my wedding was drawing closer and closer, I was becoming increasingly more aggravated with myself. I guess in tandem with this, in May of that year, I started attending personal therapy. I've spoken about this in my video about grief, but I started attending personal therapy, and that was really helpful, I guess, to almost like lay some of the foundations for me getting more psychologically ready to, after my wedding, go all in and actually just throw myself fully into HA recovery. And now the term going all in, I took that from Stephanie Buttermore, who I still can't believe sadly passed away earlier this year. I owe that woman so much. Her videos about going all in, for different reasons, but her videos about going all in were in many ways what like reassured me and what gave me a lot of the confidence of being able to launch myself into, or at least psychologically prepare for launching myself into HA recovery. And pretty much like that is what happened. So I got to my wedding day and, had some time away afterwards, but pretty much as soon as I got back home after getting married, I was like, that's it. Like, I am going all in. I am sick and tired of feeling sick and tired of constantly thinking about food all the time, of constantly feeling like no matter how much I eat, I am never going to be full. Like when I was a bodybuilder, and honestly for like as long as I can remember prior to that, especially when I was struggling with like really, really bad binging, I used to obsessively watch 10,000 calorie eating challenge, 20,000 calorie eating challenges, all that type of like food, you know, I guess food videos on Instagram. To be fair, as a psychologist, I've always been fascinated by people's like food relationship and that type of thing. So that's always interested me anyway. But I was obsessed with those types of like massive cheat day videos. And although I never tried one of those, I was convinced that I would be able to easily without a problem eat 10,000 calories in a day, not struggle at all with it, because essentially for as long as I can remember in this never ending effort to diet and be smaller that I, you know, I guess endured for the majority of like from about like what age 15 to fuck knows when, like 26, 27, I'd always just felt insatiably hungry. I always felt that once I started eating chocolate that I could not stop, and I always forced myself to stop, I guess, or like I binged and then I would restrict and the cycle would keep going. But I'd never actually let myself eat to full satiety ever in my life. And so going all in, essentially, as Stephanie Buttermore put it, was the steps to actually just allow yourself to eat. Just allowing myself to eat. The research and the evidence around HA suggests that you should eat 2,500 calories a day to be able to recover your period, but like that is, it's more often than not, it's not enough. I also decided to continue to exercise throughout my HA recovery. However, I was going to the gym at this point now only 4 times a week from what used to be 5 days a week, religiously every single week for the best part of like, I don't know, 4.5 years or something like that. I stopped going for walks, so I reduced my steps from like average 15,000 a day to about 6,000 a day, and it was like I wasn't going out of my way to be physically active. I was resting as much as I was physically able to rest and not lose my mind with. Again, therapy was really helpful for that. And I was probably eating like upwards of 3,500 4,500 calories a day, and I did that for 2.5 months, and I got my period on the 1st of January 2023. Between me getting married and getting my period back, I think I gained about 12 kilos in 2.5 months, which I know sounds like a lot, and I know is really scary, and it was really scary, and it was really uncomfortable, and it was really upsetting too. But I can't explain to you the relief of having my Natural Cycles app predict me a period, tell me that I'd ovulated for the first time in a year since I'd started using Natural Cycles, since coming off the pill. And honestly, like I wasn't horrified when I was a teenager and I got my period, but I was quite excited. I was like, ooh, womanhood. Nothing beats the feeling of getting your period again when you've struggled with hypothalamic amenorrhea at, you know, in your 20s. It was such a moving moment, and I know like it sounds mental to say that like you were moved to tears by your own menstrual cycle returning, but genuinely all the struggle, the psychological challenge, the seeing my body change really rapidly, not recognizing my body, the mental breakdowns that I had about gaining weight, and all these fears that I'd always had about like not being good enough in my body if I was any bigger than I was, realizing that none of that really mattered because I had my health, was just one of those like moments of my life. And honestly, I have no regrets. I basically, once you get your first period back, if you've had secondary hypothalamic amenorrhea, you need to have 3 consecutive menstrual cycles with a confirmed ovulation to confirm that you are now, I guess, at least theoretically at least restored from HA. And I had 4 menstrual cycles, but one of them was an ovulatory cycle. So I didn't ovulate, I think it was like in February and March. So it was up until April where I had three menstrual cycles, and I continued to gain weight all the way up until May in 2023, where I felt like I was okay, finally recovered. And actually that coincided with me no longer feeling like there was a black hole, empty sort of feeling in my stomach anymore. And from that point onwards, when I was no longer like, up until that point, I'd been eating when I was hungry, just eating to meet that need for hunger. That was just, that I'd been insatiable up until that point. But from around about like May, at this point I'd like gained 15 kilos from like where I was when I got married. And at that point in May, I was like, do you know what? I'm not hungry anymore. Like I actually feel satiated for the first time ever. And because I'd had 3 ovulatory menstrual cycles at that point, I then at that moment in time decided that I was able to gradually start exercising a little bit more, I continued to eat to my hunger cues, and gradually from then up until maybe like a year, I slowly lost about 7 kilos, so like a stone, and I have maintained my weight since then. So that brings me to the end of part 2, and in part 3 I'm going to tell you a little bit more about what that experience has been like for me, what it's been like, how I eat now, how I exercise now, how I manage all those things, and what it's been like to recover from hypothalamic amenorrhea, how that has pushed me further away from bodybuilding as a sport, how I got into hybrid training, how I've maintained my menstrual cycle through hybrid training, and everything and anything in between. So if you did enjoy this video, make sure you like it and make sure that you subscribe to my channel so you don't miss out on the next part, and I look forward to seeing you then.